Hey guys, please welcome to the Law Firm Accelerator, Angela Giampolo. Hi Angela, so nice to have you here.
Thank you so much, Victoria, for having me.
To start us off, could you introduce yourself a little bit and tell us about your practice?
Sure. So, Angela Giampolo, and I have my own law firm, have for the last 17 years, licensed in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Florida, and Arizona. And yeah, like I said, about 17 years ago, I saw a need within especially the United States. I'm Canadian originally, so I saw a need in the United States for a lawyer geared predominantly towards the LGBTQ community for all their legal needs. And so I formed Giampolo Law Group as the law firm that would serve them, and then Philly Gay Lawyer from an advocacy perspective, which is sort of the name that I do my radio shows, books, columns, and whatnot, is as Philly Gay Lawyer. And then Giampolo Law Group is my law firm.
Awesome. So when you say Philly Gay Lawyer, are there specific practice areas you focus on?
So I coined what I call LGBTQ law, and under that is estate planning, adoptions, uncontested divorces, transgender name changes, we do pro bono, and employment discrimination are the main areas that we focus on.
Awesome. So you emphasized uncontested divorces. Can you talk a little bit more about why it's only uncontested divorces for you?
Yeah, so I'm very, very passionate around uncontested divorces to the extent that a divorce can be amicable, right? If people want to throw Tiffany vases at one another that they can't afford, there are a plenty of lawyers out there that I can refer them to. But I fought hard for marriage equality for a number of years, and so I'm very passionate. We've been watching straight folks mess up marriage for 400 years, so I want to do things differently. We do marriage differently. My 4 people walked me down the aisle at my wedding, and we had a drag show culminating, at the end of the wedding. It was a 3-day wedding culminating in an all-day drag show. So we do marriage differently, we do life differently, and I'm passionate around doing divorce differently. So I educate, my clients around all of the creative ways in which we can do divorce amicably. So, it's not always easy, but at the end of the day, if they're committed to an amicable process, I help get them there. And estate planning, very similar. A lot of my folks don't want to get married. And so from an estate planning perspective, there's a lot of unique, nuanced documents and adoptions. The only way that we're forming families in some way, shape, or form is through IVF, surrogacy, private adoption, foster adoption. So that it is a big way, or a big portion rather, of the family law. And then I do a lot of also prenups and postnups in the family law realm. Again, LGBTQ folks have only been allowed to marry for 10 years, so a lot of them are older. I was 38 when I got married and owned multiple properties by then, and my business and this and that. So, and even straight folks, the national marrying age now is 31 for men and 29 for women. So, people are meeting with 401ks and, all of the things. And so I do a lot of premarital agreements. I always tell folks, everyone has a prenup. If you're married, it's whether or not you wrote it or the state in which you live in wrote it. But if you get divorced, we're reading something, and the divorce code is meant for everyone in the state in which you live in, therefore meant for no one. And so who better than to write your own divorce code, than you and your partner. And so when it's phrased that way from an empowering place, a lot of folks, like, a prenup just becomes a no-brainer.
I love that. That is such an accurate quote, but also such a good thing for other divorce lawyers to maybe use in their own practice, is everyone has a prenup. Whether you wrote it or the state wrote it for you, you have one.
You're
brilliant. I love it.
Yeah.
It makes sense. As somebody who's been divorced.
Right. The other way that I describe it is, especially for folks who have never been married, right? If you've never done something before, if, like, I'm going to have game night, board game night, and you're coming over to my house and it's a brand new board game, hot off the presses, still shrink wrapped, right? And we unveil the board game. What's the first thing that we're going to do?
Try to win it.
Read the rule book.
I see your point.
Right. Read the instructions, right? And so,
That is the
you're gonna,
ideal, yes.
yeah. So you're gonna do this thing called marriage, play this game that you've never played before, and so why not write your own, rule book? We signed one a couple months ago, and this couple, their happy place is Provincetown, and which is a little gay mecca, and mainly for summer. But they've been every year for the last 14 years. They've been together for a while, and they put in that if someone throws in the towel, that even if it's February, they agree to put away their phones, turn off the white noise, go to P-Town and discuss how they got there, right?
Mm,
And you're taught in the law not to put in unenforceable provisions in an agreement, right?
hmm.
But they wanted that in there. And so I added a whereas clause, right? Making it clear that it was unenforceable and I can't call the cops, just because Patrick said Scott won't go to P-Town, right? There's nothing that I can do to make him go to P-Town, but like it's part of their, if 11 years from now they get divorced, I hope that they go back and read that and see that
Mm.
and remember the intention with which they added that and the love that they had for one another when they put that together. And if folks could channel even a fraction of the love that they have for one another on the way out of a divorce that they
Mm.
had on the way in, there'd be a lot more amicable divorces.
I really like that. It sounds like you really do your best to just lower the temperature. And that can be so important with divorce lawyer when you have two divorce lawyers who are trying to lower the temperature. That can make it much better for everybody involved, especially if there's children, for sure.
Absolutely. Yep.
So you have a very cool niche for yourself. You've created this niche for yourself. And that brings us to the next question. This is a podcast about marketing. And I know you are an expert in marketing. So can you tell me a little bit about what kind of marketing efforts have been most successful for you?
And you know, sorry if this is like a boring answer, and maybe people say it all the time on your podcast, but or people, I'm sure lawyers hear it a lot, but it's so true, is I'm just myself, right? Like to me, the number one component of quote unquote good marketing is attracting people who are going to enjoy working with you and repelling people who won't enjoy working with you. Like, I remember one of my first offices was in a suite, right, of multiple lawyers, and I would always get gifts. And the receptionist that we all shared was like Teresa. Teresa was like, Angela, why do you always get gifts? And everyone else gets hate mail. And I'm like, because my clients like me. She's like, flowers are coming in, wine, chocolate, all of these things. She's like, I've never seen a lawyer get so many gifts. And I'm like, well, my clients like me, but you go on my website and there's a 2-minute video of me welcoming you, giving you a snippet of what it's like to work with me and saying that my mean chihuahua will probably bite you when you come to my office. And, it's so what aspect of marketing has been most successful for me is really just being myself, and authentically, every time I do anything on social media or any video, it's not scripted. I'm not reading. I don't have whatever you call those things that you read from, but you know what I mean? Like it's not forced, and, I think about what I'm going to say, but at the end of the day, I say it, coming from my heart or my opinions, and people gravitate towards that. Also, my social media is, for better or worse, like Gloria Steinem said, the personal is political, right? And so for me, the personal is professional. I joke that I'm gay for pay, in the sense that, everything that I do is LGBTQ. My office is in the neighborhood. My UPS woman is gay. My landlord's gay. Like all the things. And so you're on my social media, and you'll see me on vacation, at Pride. I do Pride festivals. I go live at Pride. And so people see the real me. At Halloween, I'm RBG for Halloween, and I'll do will signings dressed as RBG. And so, my personal is professional instead of political. My personal is professional and vice versa. And again, I think people gravitate towards that because they see the human side of myself, and then they already know, like, and trust me, which is like the number one, right, component to turning a cold lead into a warm lead without you having to nurture them in any way is for them to go to this thing called the internet, right? And all platforms, social media, and they can already get a sense of my personality, of what it's going to be like to work with me long before they've ever reached out. And then the second piece to that, which is, more marketing, specific, is exactly what you said, is I niched down, right? 17 years ago, when it was not okay to be gay in any way, shape, or form in most places in the United States anyways. And I remember I had mentors and advisors that were like, Angela, you shouldn't brand yourself as Philly gay lawyer. You make up 7% of the population. How are you going to eat? Right? Like, you're going to repel 93% of potential clients right off the bat because they don't think they'll be able to go to you. But I trademarked, the riches are in the niches. And it's very true, because people Google, they see me on social media, and they have already self-qualified themselves, right? So when they reach out, like, I never have no shows. I go to lawyer conferences and I hear lawyers say, like, I have a 44% show up rate. And I'm like, what is that? Like, unless a potential client of mine is in a car accident, they always show up. And it's because it's so clear what I do that before they reach out, they've already decided that they need the service, and they're reaching out to just form that engagement. So I think the niching in and of itself, first and foremost, I could be niche and not personal on social media. You know what I mean? Like, I could just niche and leave it at that. And then I've niched. And on top of that, I'm very authentic in all of my marketing.
So there's a couple of things you've said that are very interesting. And there's a couple of things that I've heard from other extremely successful folks. One thing I think you didn't mention, but you kind of implied it, is that you have a very long-term view of your practice. When you build your practice, you didn't build it for a month, you didn't build it for a year, you built it for decades, because it sounds like you wanted to be able to continue to specialize in this. And that allowed you to maybe turn away some cases, some clients who weren't the right fit for you, but it also prevented burnout, and it created a better reputation for you, right? Because when we take, it's when we take the client we know we shouldn't be taking, that our reputation gets burned.
Yeah, right.
Because we know every time. Right. I'm not a lawyer, but I work with lawyers, and I'm like, I really shouldn't be working with this person. And
right.
You never regret walking away from something.
Right.
But the other thing that
let's hone in on just that piece, because I think not enough lawyers set out, when they either open up their firm or if they're part of a firm and need to market themselves, right? I think the first step there is getting clear on what you want your journey as a lawyer to be, what you want it to look like, right? So when I opened up my firm, I was very clear, like you said, on what my vision was, not just for the law firm, but like what would make Angela Giampolo happy to exist as a lawyer. Right. And that meant no litigation. Right. So right up, like, I want to travel. I am happy traveling. Like, I knew that I wanted to be able to create a firm that would be successful regardless of where I was in the world, long before COVID, 17 years ago. So that meant that litigation wasn't even though there are a lot of LGBTQ folks in need of litigation, that wasn't going to be something that I would do personally, because I didn't want to be at the behest of a docket and a judge telling me where I needed to be, or 5 o'clock faxes with a motion that I needed to respond to, all the things. That wouldn't make me happy, right? So I got clear on what I would love, and then built the firm around what I would love, and then the vision for the firm sort of secondary to that, right? But it's from the foundation. I've always been a happy lawyer, and, I'm always telling people who, like, students who come to me, should I apply to law school? Should I go to law school? This, that, the other. And I'm always the one saying yes, because I love it. But at the same time, not enough folks actually get clear on what they would love. They just think, I'm a lawyer and lawyers do these things, and so this is what I have to do. And next thing you know, it's 11 years later and they're not as happy as they otherwise could be. So, just wanted to expand on the vision pieces. I had a vision for the firm, but I also had a vision for me and how I was going to be as a lawyer.
Yeah, that certainly makes a lot of sense. And I know there are folks listening out there who are trying to figure out their vision. And talking from my perspective, I run a marketing agency and I'm very particular about the clients I will take. I'm very particular about the work we will and will not do. And in the end, it comes down to what makes Victoria happy, because I like to work with people who are easygoing, and I like to work with people who will give me the opportunity to do my job rather than kind of stand over me. And I like to work with smaller lawyers because that gives me the ability to really help them. And, rather than dealing with a lot of red tape, I can actually do things.
Yeah.
And I think for any entrepreneur out there, whether you're attorney or not, it's very important to figure out your vision first. And you may not be able to turn away a case initially when you first open, but when you have that very clear vision and that's where you're going, as soon as you have that opportunity, you have to start moving on towards your vision, whether that's baby steps or whether you're able to, you got lucky and found your amazing clients right away, like I did, whether that's giant leaps, one or the other, you have to move towards your vision. But you can't move towards something unless you have it. Then you just don't know where you're going. You're just wandering around. And certainly
Exactly.
that's great advice for any lawyer. And so you have this very long-term perspective and you have a niche that you love and that you feel very passionate about, which is, again, you are lucky to be able to be in that position. I'm lucky to be in that position. But a lot of people, maybe they don't have that niche that they feel so strongly about. What would you suggest for those people, who are lawyers now and who are trying to find their niche? What would be a good way to find it?
Again, I would start with an internal exploration, right? Because first it stems from coming up with your perfect client avatar, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
it, like, especially at the very beginning of my practice, or a couple years in, when I like crystal clear on my perfect client avatar, they were clients, had become friends, and I downloaded their Facebook picture, like the actual, like, two or three clients that were the perfect client that emulated.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't just, when you do marketing exercises and it's like Sophie is 44 and divorce, like, no, actually make it tangible. If you've had a practice or you've been in practice for, anything more than 6 months, you've had someone
Mm-hmm.
that you loved working with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hone in on what it was about that real client that you worked with that you loved. Whether it was like you said, I don't want to be micromanaged, if it's about how the client is, right? And nothing to do with the niche or community or anything like that, but just like how the client is. But just get clear on a real client that you served and what you loved about it, right? And that will get you, in my opinion, like 30%, 30 to 40% of the way there, because now you have something tangible that you're like, I want 100 of these clients, right? And then delve further, right? So what do you love, right? Do you love baseball? I had one lawyer friend who loves gin, and he's become like a specialist in gin distillery. Like, there's so many micro distilleries out there now, right? He's like the go-to for micro gin distilleries. And so it doesn't have to be a large community, but it can be divorced women, right? The Latino population, because you're fluent in Spanish. You're Italian, right? And you join the Italian Chamber of Commerce and you become like the go-to for everyone with a vowel at the end of their name, right? So it's just really like, where do you flourish? Which communities do you flourish in? Literally take a hobby and turn it into like the perfect client. There are just so many aspects about yourself that you love, where also you will be relatable, right? Like, if you are a divorced female attorney and you want to work with, women in family law and helping them divorce, like, your story will be so relatable to them,
Mm-hmm.
right? My friend who represents gin distilleries, like, when he goes and tastes the gin, like, the clients love that he's a connoisseur of it and that their lawyer is not just some lawyer, right? That
Mm-hmm.
that their lawyer is relatable to them. So it's so personal, but that's what makes it so that you will find your perfect client base as opposed to just throwing a dart against the wall like, okay, that'll be my niche, right? Or
Hmm.
just saying like I do corporate law, right? Like there are a ton of lawyers who specialize in that. Like how can you drill down even further? And you want to drill down, in my opinion, you want to drill down so far that someone's looking at you and is like, why would you only want to work with 7% of the population, like what people said to me, right? And
Hmm.
when you've drilled
Hmm.
down that far, then you're basically the only lawyer catering to those people. And
Right.
when 100% of those 7% call you, it's actually a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot of people.
Right.
Um, so really good advice there. Take the ideal client, an actual person who you've actually worked with. And you don't have to work in your own law firm with that client. That could be, a client you worked with right out of the law school, whatever there. And then you come to somebody like myself, and it's so much easier for us to design conversion elements
Mm.
to get better pictures, to make sure we appeal to that specific client. And we can actually even ask that client, hey, what do you think about this verbiage? Which is not something we can do when we're trying to grab everybody in the world. And I think that's something that really works super well, and so few people do it. Now, there are many ways I don't like this phrase, but there are many ways to pet a cat, right? So there are some people who do very, very well appealing to a broad segment. But there are not that many people who do very, very well, doing what you do, being very niche down. And I think it's only because people are just not trying it. They kind of, they get into a practice, they have a good life, and they kind of forget to find that happiness. But what's the point of, we spend so much time at work. You got to be happy doing this stuff. I mean, otherwise, what's the point?
Right. I mean, imagine if every single day you said you woke up and worked with clients that you loved
Mm,
working with.
I do. And
Exactly. Same.
it's a great life. You wake up
It's
and you're like, yes, I get to be myself today.
exactly. And that only happens if you have people constantly reaching out to you that you
Yeah.
know you're already going to love. And it's because you set your whole marketing
Hmm.
around that and to attract that. And to your point about working with folks like yourself, target marketing, like once you hone in on who that person is, right, with the way ads are and Facebook and pixels and all of the things, like then like Victoria can just deliver a whole bunch of
Hmm.
people who fit that exact demographic. Like it's, but first and foremost, what are the traits and characteristics and demographic information to hand to someone like you,
Yeah.
and that you can help pull it out of them, but I think it's best served with by first doing some solo reflection,
Mhm.
right? and
Absolutely.
and then you can just dive in and then get strategic and technical and with all of the pixels and things I don't know anything about.
Right. You need to know where you're going before I can really dive in there. And I actually get calls all the time from new lawyers who are just starting out, and I will take every call. I'm happy to talk to people, happy to give them advice, but I will usually turn them down because I don't think they understand their market. And if you don't understand your market, I'm not going to understand your market, and you are not going to be happy in the end, and it's just not worth it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I often will say to new lawyers, figure it out first, figure out exactly what you want, and then call me back in 6 months or a year. And I'm here to give you advice, but I can't take your money because I don't know what to give you. I don't
Right.
understand.
Right. Like anything else, right? The input that you put into something is directly proportional to the output that that comes out. So
Yeah.
if they don't know where they're going from, point A to point B, right? Then there's not much that like that's literally what you'll give them back, right? Is yeah, that's one of the hardest parts of marketing
This.
is the
Yeah.
solo work that nobody can do, except the client themselves.
Exactly. Exactly. So you've done a lot of things right. You've been very successful. Tell me about what is the least successful thing you've done in marketing to promote yourself. What would you say, like, oh, I shouldn't have done that?
No,
That's a hard question.
yeah, it is. It was probably something I didn't like. You know what? I would say it was spending a lot of money on like a marketing campaign, right? That I was sort of sold into in terms
Mm,
of like let's put a ton of reels out there, right? And then they produced all of the prompts, and we spent 3 days filming, like from like so. Imagine 3 days completely out of your business, right, from nine to
Mm-hmm.
five. Basically, I handed over the reins, right, to someone that I knew I wanted reels. I've been doing everything myself and, all of the things. And it was like, okay, let's do this marketing campaign. But like, I, I didn't. And again, I'm so niche that I shouldn't have left the prompt creation up to them. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but then it gets to a certain point. It's like, if I have to do it all myself anyways, then what am I paying you for, just to show up with cameras and right? So, but I did it. I was like, you know what? And I spent an exorbitant amount on this like reel campaign that still hasn't even launched. I haven't even put the reels out into the market because I'm not a fan of them, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so it was just it, and I'm sure you would say the same thing. There are a ton of marketing people out there, right? That I'm sure that would have worked for somebody, right? And it could have worked for me if I had taken the hours it would have taken to really hone in on the prompts themselves. But when I looked at the prompts, it was just like so forced, right? There was nothing
Mm-hmm.
natural about the whole process. And so I ended up not putting it out to the world. Like I didn't like it. It wasn't me. It would have been a complete demarcation from anything anyone knows about me on social media. It just didn't fit, right? But I gave it a shot. Like, so I would say the upside, or what someone listening can take from that is, again, if you're clear on how you portray yourself on social media and sort of the whatever that is, whatever your stance is, right? If it's super formal, then seeing you in a pool on vacation is going to be like super weird. If you're always in a suit doing, whatever. And for me, it was the flip of that. Like it was
Mm-hmm.
something completely different. And I didn't listen to my gut. Like I wasn't, all about it to begin with, and I was like, but then I'm like, do something new, try it. Reels are all the rage, right? Just do it, and there's nothing wrong with reels. It was just how it. But I would say the takeaway is like stay true to your marketing because people want consistency above all else, and they can sniff that out like right off the
Mm-hmm.
bat, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
So a couple of things there. Um, I find that it's incredibly hard to do good social media from outside the office. And the reason why is because you are very authentic, and the people who do social media well are very authentic. And the only way for you to portray yourself authentically is for you to be you, or for somebody who knows you very, very well. So what I found useful, especially for attorneys like yourself who do have a longer sales cycle, is to consider hiring somebody who would work with you, next to you,
Mhm.
younger. The younger
Mhm.
the better, because they know all the TikToks and all the stuff, and have them internalize your message, your environment, your unique sales proposition, and have them do the work. So
Mhm.
instead of putting it on a person who has never met you or met you for 3 days, have somebody who's worked with you for 6 months and somebody who's on the same sort of on the same wavelength as you. And there's many amazing recent college graduates who would love this job and would love to work with you. So that's something for you to consider in the future. You don't have to do it yourself.
Mhm.
And what I found is consistently over and over and over again. There's a reason why we don't do social media for humans. We do social media for AI, but not for humans. And the reason why is because I just don't think I can deliver an authentic product that's going to generally convert the people that you need in the long run. And I'm sure there are agencies who do it, but overall, I would say bring that in-house, whereas things that are extremely technical, like ad management and SEO and web design, that you don't need to do in-house, that you should do outside of your office, because it's just more, it's very technical, it's more efficient. So
And what do you
that
mean
would be
by
my.
social media for AI but not for humans?
So when I publish a blog post, let's say on your website, right? I could just publish a blog post and then nobody knows about it, right? And maybe somebody will visit it. But what I do is I actually tell, and by I mean my team of 15 people, not me personally. I tell Google, I tell Facebook, I tell Twitter it exists. So when we go we post, a little blurb from your blog post on Facebook, and then we link back to it. We post a little blurb on Twitter, link back to it. We post a little blurb on your Google My Business listing, which is owned by Google, link back to it. We create a video using AI technology based on your blog post, which is usually just reading the text because you've already approved that. We post it on YouTube, and Google owns YouTube, right? So Google now is informed that this blog post is prominent enough for various entities to have it on social media. And then we link to it. So anytime we create a link, it's like a vote of confidence. So when you have backlinks, multiple backlinks from YouTube, from Twitter, from Facebook, even though they're generated by our property, right, by your law office, that still tells Google you are working on things, you have active social media presence. So we are not looking to convert people. Like, nobody is going to convert. Well, maybe somebody will convert, but I'm not counting on people converting because you posted a blog post. I'm counting on people converting because you go online and you talk about something really cool, and people see you and see a smiling face and they like you. But having those blog posts there is helpful to give Google and all the social media knowledge of what you do, where you are, how you practice, et cetera, et cetera. So all those things ideally should be done every time there's a new piece of content on your website, and that includes Pinterest. It includes a whole bunch of other properties as well.
So
It gets pretty
additional,
technical.
yeah, so additional eyeballs, right? It's not meant for conversion per se, like direct from
Exactly.
A to B, but additional eyeballs, and by default authority, both Google authority as well as from the human seeing it, because it's like, oh wow, they wrote this and what have you.
Exactly.
So and
Exactly.
again, the long term result of doing that consistently is eventual conversion in some way, shape, or form.
Exactly. I have an attorney, Russell Knight, who is in Chicago. He's the number one divorce lawyer in Chicago. We don't write anything for him. He loves writing. God bless him. So he will post the blog posts, and all we do is we go and we create all of these different social media properties. We also do a PR. Every time he posts a blog post, anytime any one of our clients gets a blog post, we do a press release announcing the blog post. We post it all over social media. He does exceptionally well based on just that work alone. For most of our clients, we write. But because he doesn't want us to write, we do just that work, and it works to the point where he had to take a year break because he couldn't hire people fast enough. Yeah. So he just came back a few months ago. So yeah, it works really, really well. So that's a
You
tip for
worked
anybody
yourself
out
out
there.
of a job. That's a good, in a
I don't
good way.
mind, you know what I
In
mean?
a
I
good
don't
way.
mind. We're going to do the best work. And usually people who are that happy with us, they will send us so many clients, it makes up for it.
Exactly. No, that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But he came back. So he's good
Great.
with hiring now.
He's
He's got
ready
like, I
now.
think six. Yeah. He hired six lawyers in a year. So I think he's good.
Awesome.
Well, thank you for letting me rant about marketing. I love this stuff, and I get very excited about it. So to get back to you, you have been very successful in scoring some really major media coverage. I know you have a unique niche and not everybody does, but could you give some advice to other lawyers out there who would love at least a quarter of the media coverage you're getting, and how can they get that?
Yep. So again, regardless of your niche or whether you have one, there are sources out there. There are a ton of CLE providers, like, outside of the top three, right? Like NBI and Lorman, like outside of those, there are so many CLE providers that are starving for content from lawyers,
Mm-hmm.
right? And they do a lot of what, you said in terms of like it goes out, right, to the world, it gets indexed. Obviously there are ideas it's behind a paywall, but you're getting your name out there as, again, an authority, right? Use the gin distillery example, right? But to, even if you do something not unique in the sense of like, I'm a divorce lawyer, right? Pick a very, very specific, nuanced area of divorce law, maybe something in the law that just changed, and maybe use a company like yourself to send out press releases to 10 CLE providers, and become the expert in that new area of law, right? Powers of attorney laws changed in 2018, and I sent out, to all of CLE providers, like, I can talk about Act 95 and right, and they're like, love it, right? So they're just like, nobody's going to them. It's like a gold mine to go to these CLE providers and say, I will be an instructor for you, and then you get to put that on your website and on your LinkedIn. I'm a faculty and this, that, the other, and I wrote, all the things. So that's low hanging fruit that I feel like anyone tomorrow could go out and do and be speaking on a topic next month. Also writing, right? Like, so I write for online periodicals, right? But just like Russell Knight, it can be your blog, right? Like, just start writing. And Google indexes it, LinkedIn indexes it, but start writing, and don't write about just general stuff. Write about very specific, nuanced stuff, because then someone will Google that, right? But if you just write about divorce, it's like you're competing against a million other lawyers writing about divorce, right? And so if you write about international cross-border kidnapping in a divorce, something so random that maybe only happens out of 2% of all cases, but now that gets Googled and you're the one popping up because you wrote 4 articles on it or something, right? But also, again, just like CLE providers, Googling publications in your practice areas and reaching out to them and say, would you like a reoccurring columnist, at no charge, just to be able to advertise, right? And so I have a lot of gift in kind, things like that, where I don't pay for advertising in certain magazines, but I'm giving them content. And so by virtue of me having content on there, it's kind of like an ad for me. I didn't pay $750 for the ad, and it's more than an ad because I'm providing value to their readers. So it's so much more valuable to their readers, right, when they see that. So writing, really just being proactive. Also, we're lawyers, we're advocates, right? So depending on what you do, reach out to the antithesis of, like, who hates your side, if you will, right? So I was a Fox News analyst. They loved me.
Really?
Right. Fox loves me. But I purposely, there aren't many LGBTQ legal advocates reaching out to Fox saying, I'll be your person, right? But you go on, if I wanted to be on CNN or this or that, like, they're a dime a dozen. But
Yeah.
who is me reaching out to Fox saying, I will let your audience beat me up for 4 hours, at any given. And it did when marriage equality was happening. I did a 4-hour block, 15 minutes in random cities around the country. And for 15 minutes, I was just fielding, the craziest, sometimes most hateful questions. I was on religious radios. I was on, like, but it's an audience. It's a listenership, right? And then so I'm not thinking that the audience of Fox News is going to reach out to me and I'm going to become their lawyer, but it's how I get to repurpose and says, as seen on Fox News, as seen on, in the Wall Street Journal, as seen on. So then you get to add those badges to your website, add authority, and then someone like yourself repurposes that content and just the words that came out of my mouth and the fact that I was on the radio. So I feel like, again, if you're creative, regardless of who you serve and what practice areas you are in, there's low-hanging fruit for media for all
That's
lawyers out there.
brilliant. Some great advice, some very unique things I haven't heard before. I love it. So we don't have much time left, but I want to talk to you about Caravan of Hope. Can you tell me a little bit more about this?
Yeah, so I keep my marketing very simple, right? Philly gay lawyer, Caravan of Hope. So it's literally what it sounds like. It's a caravan, a 32-foot RV that I took cross country during the month of last June. 5,000 miles, 14 cities, providing pro bono legal services to the LGBTQ community at a time when the Human Rights Campaign had declared a state of emergency for travel for LGBTQ folks. Last year, there were 535 anti-LGBTQ bills introduced. And as of May of this year, we already surpassed that. So we're on pace to be over 1,000 anti-LGBTQ bills by the end of this year. this June I purposely took off to prepare for next June to do it again. But so the Caravan of Hope is a nonprofit that I founded when the anti-LGBTQ sentiment got really bad after the 2016 election, and does exactly what it says. I took it cross country and provided pro bono legal services to folks where there may not be out competent legal counsel, and that was very true. I mean, in the 5,000 miles that we traveled, the 14 cities that we stopped in, the word law or legal is not in the name, right? It's Caravan of Hope. If you didn't know that it was legal in some way, shape, or form, that's not readily apparent by the name. And my biggest aha or takeaway at the end of that trip was that the most hope that we gave folks were the ones that we could not help legally, actually, but that just by listening to them and making eye contact with them and hearing their story, for once, like in the middle of Alabama and in the middle of Tennessee and these places where it's not okay to be out, right? That we were a resource. They would come on the caravan. I had a documentarian on board, and I would give folks 15 minutes with the documentarian to tell their story. I have chills. And I would see their shoulders go up from being like all tense to walking out of the RV relaxed and smiling. And these were folks that in no way, shape, or form could we actually help legally. But just by being willing to listen to their story and legitimize it, normalize it, accept them, love them, we gave them more hope than I realized. So it was definitely a transformative, amazing month. I never thought that I'd survive 30 days in an RV with 3 people traveling. But and Nico, my Chihuahua, came. He was co-pilot. And we'll do it again next year. And my vision for that is that I'll have lawyers all over the countries willing to do their caravan in their state, that I don't have to travel the whole country in one RV, but that there's 50 Caravan of Hopes, all over the country serving the LGBTQ community in areas where it's not as easy to be out like it is here in Philadelphia.
That's great idea, and I also have chills. So you mentioned working. Sorry, I have to gather my thoughts now. You mentioned working with lawyers all over the U.S. Now, I know that you also work with lawyers all over the U.S. when you don't have the caravan going. Can you talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, so again, serving a small community. There's folks all over the country. When they Google, there aren't that many lawyers who do what I do to the extent that I do it. And so they find me, even though I am not licensed in their state, or my clients move. And so I, about 8 or 9 years ago, started to realize that I was needed well beyond the states in which I'm licensed. And so hired an ethics lawyer. We worked through sort of the ethical potential landmines, right, that all lawyers have to be cognizant about. But when folks want to work with me and it's in a state that I'm not licensed, I have formed, which made the Caravan of Hope much easier to do because I had a lot of contacts in these states. But I then reach out to a lawyer in the state. We co-counsel. And the client is clear in the engagement letter that I am a legal consultant, that I am, that is not a retainer agreement. I'm not a lawyer. But if they want to work with me directly, then we can work together as a legal consultant. And then Victoria, who, I know you're not a lawyer, but we'll just pretend. So then Victoria is the licensed attorney in Oklahoma that is making this possible, and she will bless the documents or, and obviously it's no litigation, but any of the transactional work that I do in about 14 states in which I'm not licensed, but yet I work with co-counsels, and then that relationship turns into a referral relationship. Like I have one out in Colorado. They now need to do a confirmatory adoption. So while we did the estate planning together, I can't step into a courtroom out there, and nor would it make sense to travel and getting me admitted pro vice and all, just for an adoption. So I then formed these long-term relationships with these lawyers all over the country, and now my contact in Colorado is handling the confirmatory adoption. And so it yeah, it has made for an interesting, unique, way to continue to grow my practice and work with folks that I love.
Another great idea. You have really, really good entrepreneurial ideas. And I like how you combine like doing good with also really great marketing. It's just, it's a unique and rare skill. Guys, thank you so much for joining us today on the Law Firm Accelerator. Angela, thank you. I really appreciate it. I appreciate all the tips you've shared. And just stick around so we can finish uploading the podcast.
Thank you so much, Victoria.
Hi, little guy.